to create a COVID-19 needs and resource assessment. Part of that process, we are doing a couple of roundtables. So this is one of those roundtables focused on childcare and out-of-school care. All of you have been invited because you hold some sort of space within those two worlds. So we will go ahead and get started. Angel, if we can go to the next slide. This is one of the few meetings where you'll actually be asked to take your phones out of your pocket and use them. Whenever we get to a point in the presentation, we'll have a handful of questions, but if you'll go ahead and pull your phone out of your pocket or pull up another web browser and go to menti.com, and then you'll be asked to enter a code. It's 34413005. We will also post this in the chat so that you can access it that way. Once again, that's menti, menti.com, and the code is 34413005. Okay. So for today's presentations, we have, I believe, Kara Waddell from Childcare Associates, and we have a representative for Center for Transforming Lives. I think that's Carol, who's going to be joining us today. So with that, we will go ahead and turn it over to our first presenter for the day. Kara?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. And I'm going to have introduce Catherine. Not all of you have met her yet, and she's our director of policy, and so she's going to walk us through the slides, and I'll jump in as needed. And I know Rita has joined from Childcare Associates as well, who's the director of CCMS, as there were some questions regarding wait lists and impact that may be having on families as well, so she can chime in. Feel free to throw questions up as you have them, and we look forward to just overviewing at least our sense of how things are going.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quick, and I apologize. I'm more of a Zoom user, so this might take me a second to figure out how to share my screen. Let's see. All right. Awesome. Can you guys see the screen? Okay.
Yes, it looks good.
Awesome. Great. So yeah, we are thrilled to be here today to share a little bit more about childcare deserts, specifically what CCA and some of the work in Tarrant County has been doing to improve access to quality care for our children. So quick overview of what we'll talk through. First is some of the pre-pandemic work that was happening. Then we'll speak a little bit more to post-pandemic, what we saw, and then what we are doing. And so I think there's a lot of conversation today about childcare deserts as it relates to COVID and what COVID and the pandemic has done. But I wanted just to start by acknowledging that deserts and access to affordable quality care has really been a challenge for time before the pandemic. So CCA, in partnership with Workforce Solutions of Tarrant County and CCMS, has been really taking strategic steps for a long time to improve access to quality care for years leading up to the pandemic. So I wanted to start by taking a look at where we were a few years ago before we look to kind of where we are now. So in 2016, we had about 38% of our subsidy eligible children were receiving subsidized childcare. So really a little bit more than a third. And less than 1 in 5 of our subsidy providers were participating in Texas Rising Star. So even back in 2016, there was work to be done. And so CCA and Tarrant County CCMS have really been taking strategic steps to increase access and quality for young children and families. So I'll walk us through a few things that happened prior to the pandemic that have been ongoing initiatives to ensure access and quality. First, boosting the pool. CCA, CCMS, and Workforce Solutions of Tarrant County strategically invested in centers with critical deficiencies for base standards of licensing through what they called the BOOST program so that they could increase the pool of providers that were eligible to take part in TRS. They also work strategically to target information and really market what is TRS to both providers and also families so that they were aware of the quality benefits of TRS. Families were aware of what they were getting when they were enrolling in a quality center. And they focused their information or their marketing efforts strategically in high need effort areas. And then the last is incentivizing quality. So really growing the share of centers that were taking part in TRS. So the Workforce Solutions of Tarrant County gave local flexibility to decrease what we call the parent share of cost in TRS rated centers. That drove parents to want to choose quality centers because it was less expensive for them, and really incentivized the providers to opt into TRS to drive their own enrollment. So this happened, the share of quality centers really started to grow and increase both access and availability of quality centers. So what we saw was an increase in subsidy eligible children becoming enrolled in subsidized childcare. From 2016 to 2019, that share increased by about 18%. And then we also saw more centers becoming TRS providers as well. And I'll pause there and I'll let Rita speak to you a little bit about what we've been doing on the waitlist side, what we're seeing there, and how to work to really decrease the waitlist.
Thank you, Catherine. Good morning. On the waitlist side, right now we have a little over 3,000 families on the waitlist, which is about 6,777 children. And as you know, that number grows daily because people are always putting children on our wait list. But what we're doing right now to try to decrease the wait list, we are pulling about 1,000 children off the wait list every single month to try to get that number down. What we're seeing is some parents are meeting requirements and some are not. But we also have another program that we're working with. It's called Service Industry Recovery Program, and that is for arts parents that are working in the arts, entertainment, recreation, food service, and retail field. Now, that service can be accessed immediately. You're not on a wait list. If you know any families that are in that category, then have them fill out an application on our website, and they will have access to care pretty quick. So that's what we're doing to try to help families get back to working.
And Rita, for those who aren't as familiar with CCMS, like, are you like you said, you pull X number of, families off the wait list. Like, is that twice the number you normally pull?
That is twice the number we normally pull. We usually pull out 500 a month, and we've increased it to 1,000.
With the same staff, right?
Exactly.
So they're really working overtime to get families on. But what you're finding, if I'm correct, was that there's not as many when you're pulling them that are immediately qualifying.
That's true. Now, we do have a way of qualifying them for 90 days. But after the 90 days, if they are not working or going to school, then they lose childcare. So it's just a vicious cycle with some of our parents. But we're definitely trying to help them out in childcare.
And this is a pretty accurate snapshot for what's happening across the state. It's not unique. Everyone's pulling massive amounts of families off. Not as many are qualifying immediately or only on that tentative, that 90-day plan. And then the service worker thing sounds amazing, right? You just fill out a one-page, almost like an affidavit, like this, how much money my household makes, and you qualify for 12 months with no waiting list. Surprisingly, it's been very, very slow, and it's been true across the board. Those who've done elaborate marketing plans, those that have done very little marketing. The numbers are very slow in responding, and everyone's sort of befuddled, but it does mirror what we know about the service worker space, which is there's lots and lots of open jobs. And so a service worker childcare support is going about the pace of people filling service worker jobs. So if that gives a little bit of it's a bizarre time. Nothing is as it was before, and we're learning day by day to understand parents' needs, providers' needs, availability of childcare, and what childcare parents need today versus what childcare parents are going to need tomorrow.
Awesome. So we got a little bit ahead in speaking to where we are now. So I'm going to kind of breeze through the next few slides, and then we'll touch back on this point in a second. So really quickly, I wanted to throw up here, this is a data platform tool that we use to be able to understand where our supply and demand currently is. So this is kind of a heat map of where eligible children across Tarrant County may live, as well as overlaid with existing child care centers and Head Start centers. And so this data platform is really useful when determining where we're going to invest our infrastructure going forward to understand where we can be best meeting needs and where we can be serving our need areas. So really quickly, we all know that the COVID-19 pandemic has devastated the childcare industry. We first saw declining student enrollment, and then we saw what was originally layoffs to support the declining enrollment. These folks left, and then a lot of them haven't come back, and so this workforce exodus has really put a lot of pressure on our childcare centers, resulting in forced closures. Childcare centers obviously have always operated on razor-thin margins, and now with additional challenges of the pandemic, it has really devastated the industry, as I think is no surprise to anyone on this call. So here is a snapshot of the childcare desert situation currently in Tarrant County. 87% of our children here live in a childcare desert. That's just childcare. When looking specifically at quality, so that's TRS rated or NACE accredited childcare centers, that increases to 96% of Tarrant County children ages 0 to 3 living in a childcare desert. Some specifics on what we know about the impact. TRS rated childcare centers, so our quality childcare centers, were slightly more resilient through the pandemic. They closed at lower rates than their non-TRS peers. Family childcare has been most negatively impacted by the pandemic, with the cost providing home-based care increasing at much greater rates than the cost of providing center-based care, which has obviously put additional pressure on those family childcare centers. And then lastly, the workforce challenges, which we all know have prohibited many childcare centers from operating at full capacity. Right now in Tarrant County, our current staff vacancies range in a center anywhere from 25 to 50% vacant in terms of their workforce. So quick snapshot up here of the federal investments supporting childcare recovery. So I just show this, I'm not going to go through all of this, but I just want to iterate that while the situation is certainly challenging and if not dire, their time is now to be strategic because the money is coming, and we have a really unique opportunity to re-envision and reimagine the childcare sector. Some of the things that we're doing right now, in addition to the work that Rita spoke to about the Waitlist, providing TA.
I think you went on mute.
I think you're on mute.
There was some feedback a little bit. Can you, are you able to unmute? Otherwise I can keep walking through the slides.
There we go. Is that better? Okay. You guys still see my screen? Yes. Okay, great. So quickly, what we've been doing to date, providing stabilization grant technical assistance to providers, helping them apply for the money and the funding that's on the table, working strategically to invest in infrastructure in high need areas, supporting our workforce. And then we are also trying to collaborate countywide to really invest in our infrastructure in childcare deserts and expand access that way. So I'll hand it to Kara to see if you just want to quickly follow up on any of those points, double down.
Yeah, and I think it's just good for us to recognize that there's a lot of different resources that are becoming available. TWC has significant resources. By far, the biggest pond to fish in for childcare providers who are needing business support is going to be the resources that TWC is releasing. They've done round one. About 75% of providers in Tarrant County did receive round one support assistance, and that round two funding is going to be released January, February, and they've not officially announced, but that'll be coming out again. And so I know our Early Learning Alliance and others are helping providers apply for those resources. Then there's just been a conversation about, municipalities and county funding, like how could it be utilized to maybe fill in the gaps where we don't have federal funding coming from TWC, ways that it can't be utilized? How could we enhance our efforts for providers, for childcare businesses, as well as meeting the needs of families? And so more to come. We've just done some initial conversations with the county on that. It was exciting to have a $2 million announcement. We took the quality funding that's available for Texas Rising Star in our county and gave all of it, put all our chips in one spot, which is helping supplement the salary of those who work in Texas Rising Star childcare providers. And so our public officials really coordinated so that they had a joint and shared announcement showing the commitment that they really have to the cause and issue and challenges facing the childcare industry that are really unique. They are small businesses, many, but they're also facing very unique challenges. So we appreciate that. They've also announced a blue ribbon panel or blue ribbon action committee that'll help really start thinking outside the box of what are new faces, new people that need to come to the table and really help inform where we go from here. And so again, that's formed by our public officials, City of Arlington, City of Fort Worth, and Tarrant County. So willing to take any questions or answer any questions. Otherwise, we look forward to listening and hearing from others.
Thank you, Kara, Catherine, and Rita. Any questions from the group for our friends from Childcare Associates? Okay, we will move on to our next presenter. Carol Klosick is our next presenter from Center for Transforming Lives. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. That was a fantastic system overview, of course, for what's going on in the big picture and all of the different innovative responses by childcare associates and partners. What I'm going to do is drill down to a little bit to more of the specific and vulnerable populations and looking. There's the geographic childcare deserts, but we're also thinking about population deserts that don't maybe fit into the same geography.
I'm so sorry. We have a raised hand, so I want to acknowledge that before we move on. Okay. Marcelo?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Wonderful. All right, so my question is on the previous slide where you mentioned the $7 million infrastructure investment. Have you determined locations for that or how you access that or partnerships you're willing to explore?
Yeah, great question. So knowing that you're from Arlington, that was a City of Fort Worth investment. So I'm pretty sure they're going to want to have it in the municipality area. That was following up on a previous investment they had made in one CCA facility. It also put $5 million towards the Stop 6 hub that's being built and coordinated. And so that was sort of, they needed to supplement that initial investment that they made with HUD funds, and they used ARPA funds to pull that off. Now, for those who are childcare providers and saying, hey, what about us? Like, when are we going to have an opportunity, or how is that going to work? We have discussed that with the county as a whole about, can we have a childcare renovation fund? Could we have additional infrastructure investments coming to the county level? Because it's a lot easier than cobbling it together city by city and figuring out, how to make that happen. And so that the infrastructure and renovations is something that is a gap. You cannot use the federal funding for it. And it's something that we raised at the county level and municipality level to say, this is a really unique opportunity. Certainly City of Arlington can be looking also to how does it want to supplement, especially classrooms for infants and toddlers, but also still looking especially to our 3-year-old preschoolers and how they can be served in community-based settings as well as in school-based settings.
So Kara, I may have missed it, I apologize. Where did the $7 million come from?
The $7 million was from the city of Fort Worth, and it was for
Okay.
three infrastructure improvement projects in the city of Fort Worth.
And other sources of infrastructure support you're referencing could be the city of Arlington or even the county level?
Correct. Tarrant County. And I know I've had a conversation to find out, hey, what about COG? Does it have any resources that we could potentially tap into as well? It is a unique opportunity. A lot of the challenges that come is the infant classrooms and toddler classrooms are 8 children, 10 children, 12 children. It takes a lot of classrooms to be able to really meet the childcare deserts that are out there. And so it's a unique problem. We have childcare businesses that need to be properly staffed, paying at the proper levels in order to open up all of their classrooms. And yet we still have deserts of need and opportunity, including, as Carol, I think, was going to mention, in addition to geographic areas, we have issues like Tarrant County College, right, that may have a clustering of students that have childcare needs that wouldn't appear on a geographic map, and certainly some of our more fragile families as well.
And then last question related to this one topic here. Is the $7 million, has it made a difference? Has it been used? Can you tell if there's a good ROI on that, or is it too early?
Yeah, they just made the allocation. The contract has not been inked, so it's still sitting at the city level. But certainly, I think the Stop 6 is a very targeted community, and the others will be oriented more towards Head Start, specifically early Head Start, and expanding infant toddler classrooms using public funds for family that couldn't afford childcare anyway.
But you do anticipate it'll make a big difference?
It will make a big difference. And when you look at a 10-year time set, when you look year by year, man, those pre-K kids, you can put 20, 22 in a classroom, but when you get to infants and toddlers, it's much smaller numbers, usually that 8 to 12. So each classroom, when we have the chance and we have resources on the table, this is why it's so critical that we use this opportunity to invest in 0 to 5. And a shout out also, I know Fort Worth ISD also did put some funding in their bond as well to be able to expand some of the early learning infrastructure. And I know that they've been very willing to sit down at the table so that this doesn't accidentally harm childcare providers or quality childcare providers in the area. How do we do this in a way that we're thinking about the whole 0 to 5 ecosystem, as I know you guys are doing in Arlington too.
Perfect. Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Okay, Carol, back to you.
All right. Okay, so for those of you who are not as familiar with our organization, we're Center for Transforming Lives works to create emotional and financial well-being for mothers and children through 2-generation integrated services, including those for homeless families. We have early childhood education, clinical counseling, and economic mobility services throughout Tarrant County. Our early childhood education involves traditional childcare as well as Head Start and early Head Start, although not in the numbers that CCA provides. We operate 4 independent locations, but we also partner with a number of community-based providers under the umbrella of Head Start and early Head Start. And then we also partner with Fort Worth ISD for the roughly 837 children that we serve each year. So what our area of particular expertise are those very low income families under $22,000 a year to homeless families. We've done both we've provided care, but also done quite a bit of surveys and assessments of that population to really understand what the barriers are. And what we know is that for families who are experiencing homelessness, lack of access to childcare is both a cause and an effect of homelessness. It is a significant exit barrier to homelessness if they don't have the childcare that they need. And in one survey, so they said that was the least available resource for them. Families who are experiencing homelessness are they have the most difficulty when they are accessing services that have a wait list. What we saw before the pandemic, which really worsened during the pandemic, is families with young children really avoid being in shelters as much as they can. So they double up when they first become homeless, either through eviction, loss of employment. They first go to family and friends when they have those available. Then they often go to others who they are not necessarily related to or know, and then they go to motels, and then they often spend time off and on in motels and in their cars. But they do all that they can to avoid homeless shelters because of fears, largely just from what they think of as the media. As you know, as one survey participant pointed out, families, there's not a lot of advertising done by homeless shelters, and people just have a lot of fears based on either what they've heard or what they think from TV. But unfortunately, the system is often set up so that shelters are really the place to go if they want to get help. So, but families may spend many months, even years, kind of in that slide before they ever get to shelters. And we know that in the pandemic, families even much more significantly than before avoided going into shelters. Altogether, we estimate that approximately 2,400 to 3,000 families are living in motels in Tarrant County. And 25% of those families have lived in that motel setting for more than a year. And many of these families, almost 70%, are completely unaware that they are eligible for childcare supports. So then the impact of the pandemic, we've seen a decrease in percentage in our services. We've seen a decrease in our enrolled population. Typically, it's about 30% across the board of the children enrolled in Center for Transforming Lives early childhood education experience homelessness. During the pandemic, it dropped to 15 because shelters stopped enrolling, shelters stopped allowing children to leave and come back, going to and from care, in other words. And then, as I said, fewer families entered the homeless services system. And even after being evicted or referred because of those fears. And we've seen, of course, a significant increase in the stress and the emotional difficulties for children and adults. As we've reopened and re-enrolled, in fact, this year, so more than, so 22% of the children who are enrolled in Center for Transforming Lives early childhood education are experiencing some form of developmental delays, and a large percentage of that is social and emotional. So, you know, we are really excited for all of the opportunities to increase access to subsidized care. I think that is one of the most significant ways that we can stabilize the workforce and stabilize attendance in care, because it's not only been a drop off of the children enrolled in services, but we've seen a drop off in their consistent attendance. There needs to be more outreach to families with young children who are living in motels in Tarrant County. Arlington is one, has historically been, although Fort Worth is catching up, more place where families are living in motels. We strongly urge continued efforts to integrate systems, that the ISDs with homeless services or the ISDs, just in increasing their communication with all child care providers, and then of course with the homeless services system. I believe also just in looking at the vacancy rates for teachers and what's going on with the students, that is absolutely critical that we pay special attention to the social and emotional challenges of this sort of pandemic, post-pandemic world. The trauma that the children and the adults have experienced is I think very disruptive to their ability to learn and remain emotionally stable while they are either working or in care. And we also need to pay special attention to learning acceleration activities for children who have experienced more out of care time during the pandemic.
Thank you so much for that, Carol. Any questions from the group for Carol and the information she presented? And I see that Carol left a message saying that that's a great point about childcare subsidy challenge we run into. Promoting the program is balanced with the reality that we only receive funding to reserve a fraction of those who income qualify. But if Build Back Better passes, have a very different opportunity available within the state of Texas, specifically Tarrant County. That's great.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the group? Feel free to drop it in the chat or raise your hand. Jason, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for the time and the presentation. Great information today. If it's open to any part of the conversation we've had so far, I'm curious. Kara mentioned the CCRF round 2 to be released in January or February unofficially. I'm curious, have you heard any other details about what to expect there with CCRF?
Yeah, so the CCDF funds, the ARPA funds coming through this either through CCDF or coming in as stabilization grants. So technically this is the stabilization grants, right, that are coming out, and it is a very similar process to what happened last time. So if you applied for funds last time, it'll be much easier and quicker to apply this time. But there's not dramatic changes, like you can't suddenly use it for infrastructure. I know that there is a lot of discussion in Tarrant about us trying to help providers the same way that we're helping them think about salary supplements on a monthly basis as a way to raise pay immediately, but not necessarily increase base pay. A lot of providers are kind of cautious about that. The hope is that they can use that stabilization grant to continue to pay a higher wage. So they get 6 months of assistance from Tarrant County, but they can carry that forward with their stabilization funding. So there's not a specific landing site to go get, like, where there's new information that's coming. We will be glad to broadcast it widely once we know more intimate details about the application process. But it is intended to put, so much money out the door. Really, every licensed provider, this is not just Texas Rising Star, but every licensed provider really needs to be looking to and accessing those funds, as well as calculating their tax liability if it's a for-profit entity.
Thank you, Kara. One just follow up. The tranche of funds, do we have a sense if it's the same or different than the first round?
Bigger.
And that, you know, depending on how much they, you know, they gave out a certain amount in round 1, round 2 has another amount, you know, it keeps rolling it over. So the reality is there will be another one beyond the round 2. So there will be several rounds of these support dollars. It's most helpful from a business perspective to know when is that coming out, and how much am I going to be able to apply for. I know our we have our family child care lead from ADFW Childcare on the call. And so they've been working to try to understand what the cap is for family child care programs and how that was set. They were wanting it to be, I think, a little bit larger, or at least understand the calculation methodology to have that be perhaps a little bit more equitable. But Jason, as soon as I know something, I'll be glad to put it out. It's just it's kind of vague, but you can pretty much use it for things except repairs. And then you have to have meticulous records. And so you guys are fantastic at that, but smaller independent operators and childcare businesses are going to have to be really careful that they have the documentation for that funding.
Great. Okay, helpful. Thank you, Kara.
Yeah. Anything from ADFW childcare and family childcare providers? I'm just curious how this is impacting y'all.
Yes. Well, our first thing, what you just said about the equitable distribution of funds, making sure that we get an equitable piece of the stabilized grants. And then earlier when I heard you talking about just we don't have enough space for the children that we have, enough childcare providers. I was thinking that's where family childcare comes in, especially for the infants and toddlers. And so like maybe in these talks, maybe partnering with our school districts on like how family childcare can help with the registered and licensed family childcare providers can help with that space with the infants and toddlers, because that's the population we generally care for. And that will help with providers not being pushed out other things, because some may not be ready for pre-K. And there's a lot that aren't ready for that. And so that will be a space for them to kind of talk about. So, and my base is in Arlington, so I would love to talk with Dr. Marcellus more about that. And also you guys to see how family childcare can be included and continually included in this space.
Thank you so much. Any other questions for the presenters today?
Catherine, the only thing that I would, add is just that we continue to, stay in contact with each other, and things really are changing quickly as our localities and county allocate funding, as the state continues to define how it's utilizing the funding it has. And then we have Build Back Better potentially on the horizon, which raises a variety of opportunities and challenges, especially locally, as to how we tap into those funds. Is Texas going to receive those funds? Is this going to be a locality decision to apply for that funding? And so I think us being a strong and unified community that makes sure every child has access to quality early learning, regardless of setting, whether it's elementary school based pre-K, whether it's in a homeless shelter, whether it's in family child care or licensed child care or Head Start or early Head Start, we're going to need to design a system that works better for children and families. So really appreciate everybody taking time to sort of circle up today.
That's awesome. We'll actually have some Mentimeter feedback questions here in a minute. I see Marcelo has his hand raised again. Please go ahead and ask your question, but that's one of the things that we want to capture.
Yeah, so my question is, and you may have mentioned this, but a lot of information today, good information. But my question is there, I can guess, by the way, but I'm not going to guess. Is there a quote unquote desert in any part of Arlington? And if so, can you tell me where, or is that a later discussion, Kara?
Yeah, I have no specific understanding or commitment of funding from the city of Arlington from its current ARPA funding. It does have an open application currently for some city administered dollars that it normally has. But I know that Judge Whitley was hoping to connect with both mayors and sit down and say, how do we align the resources we have?
Kara, maybe, excuse me, I'm sorry, maybe I asked it wrong. I'm just asking geographically, is there an area that's a desert or?
Oh, Yeah, if you look at Tarrant County as a whole and you begin to look at high concentrations of children in poverty next to high quality early learning assets, the most red part of our county by far is Arlington. Okay. Arlington has the greatest areas of need and opportunity. That is not to say that there are not in Fort Worth and others. There absolutely are, and there are specific pockets of need, as well as those population-based needs, like we mentioned, Tarrant County College or homeless children that represent that. But yeah, Arlington is the center of the bullseye in many ways for a need to improve that infrastructure.
And specifically in what part of Arlington, or just overall everywhere?
Yeah, we can pull the zip codes and the specific ones that are, but they are the ones you traditionally highlight. Yeah, there's no surprisers.
And what the gap is related to service providers and facilities. Help me with what the gap is, just generally.
Great. It's twofold, right? And so one is increase the existing providers that are going to stay in business. How do we improve their quality to meet the standards of quality that support a child's development and growth? And then also where we just do not have buildings and infrastructure, what are we going to do through either private business or schools or Head Start or early Head Start to help meet up that difference?
And you think those two things are red in Arlington is basically what you're saying? Okay.
Yep. Especially infants and toddlers, but also preschoolers.
Sense.
Yes. Dr. Cavazos, I'm happy to send you we use a resource from Texas Policy Lab that they've put out to calculate these childcare deserts, and I'm happy to send you a snapshot or a zip code rundown from Arlington as well. We can connect offline for that, of course.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all so much. Angel, if we can go to the next. So we did want to give you all a quick overview about the project that we're actually doing with Tarrant County and get a little bit of feedback from you all. So right now we're in this phase 2. Phase 1 was complete at the end of September, where we submitted an interim report. There were a handful of you who are on this call who we had one-on-one conversations with to get that initial feedback for what those needs are across Tarrant County as it relates to quality childcare, out-of-school care. These conversations, we're really trying to be intentional about making sure that we're creating equitable strategies and implementation tactics to get the most bang for our buck and serve the most needy, or the communities with the greatest need within Tarrant County. So phase 3 we'll submit a final report to the court at the end of January. I do like to remind people that our recommendations are just that, they're recommendations. We love the conversations that we get to have with you all, and we take everything that we hear and try to incorporate it into our final report and our recommendations. But at the end of the day, the court is the one who gets to make the decision about where the money goes. So when we look at equity approach, we really look at those data-driven priorities. So identifying zip codes with the greatest need, really pulling in the community for feedback, and then evaluating what the benefits of the programs that we're recommending are, and then any barriers that we may need to remove. This was actually included in our presentation to the court for the interim report. I believe that this information came from a conversation we had with Kara. Roughly 1 in 10 Texas children under the age of 5 with working parents actually live in a childcare desert. And then as you can see, that cost of full-time childcare is pretty expensive in Tarrant County, with it ranging from $7,500 to $9,500 a year. Some of the impacts that we've seen with COVID, obviously there's been some academic delays compounded with social emotional delays for children. We have lack of availability and access to high quality childcare and youth programs. For staffing, I don't think that this is a surprise for anybody on this call, but high turnover, low pay, and need for training and certifications for providers, and then the long wait lists, not just for after school care, but from what we're hearing today, for everyone. So the recommendations that we made, these are the county's 4 focus areas, and then the goals tied to each of the focus areas. So every recommendation that we made was tied back to one of these. Go ahead, Angel. Yep, there we go. So the recommendations that we made in the interim report were to expand equitable access to high quality early learning and care for all Tarrant County families, to invest in out-of-school time providers and networks, to enhance capacity for youth services, and then expand family and individual support programs for those with dependents with disabilities. Go ahead. So I'm going to ask you all to take out your phone again and go to menti.com or pull up another web browser and then use code 3441-3005, and we'll give you all a few minutes to select what your organization is. And you'll see we give you a couple of options. So nonprofit organization, 0 to 3, 3 to 6, K through 12. There we go. We've got some coming in. Okay. And then the next question is, what have you seen change in immediate needs and priorities for childcare, out-of-school care, and dependent care since March of 2020? And these will be open-ended, so we'll leave this up for a minute and just let it kind of scroll. You'll see it pop up pretty quickly. So we see no staff, the need has increased substantially, increased need for behavioral health services for children. This is something that's been coming up quite a bit. Either behavioral health and mental health have been some of the biggest needs or increased needs that we've seen kind of across the board with every organization that we've talked to over the last few months. Immediate need for compensated qualified childcare educators. I agree with that. Classroom closures as a result of staff vacancies, need to help children regulate behaviors and emotions and out of school. Business needs for family childcare educators, change in workforce. Opportunity to look for our overall infrastructure needs for children 0 to 5. I think that that's one of the things that we talked about earlier, which is great. We'd love to be able to capture that and be able to take that back. Equitable wages and, sorry, it scrolled, opportunities. Okay, lots of stuff, good stuff coming in. Awesome. So the four programs that we recommended to the court, and these are just kind of high level. We'd like for you all to prioritize these. So programs for children 0 to 3 years of age, universal pre-K programs, out of school care programs, and then dependent care programs. No surprises there, which we love to see. What are the greatest barriers to childcare within Tarrant County? So we give a couple of answers such as lack of access, access to affordable childcare, access to quality childcare, transportation, hours of operation, staffing shortages, shortage of licensed providers, and then other. And we'll let you guys answer that and we'll see how this fills in. Thank you for that clarification, Kara. She said we see affordable and quality going hand in hand, cannot be separated, or we have equity concerns. Thank you very much for that statement. That's something that we'll look to combine. So our next question is, what are the greatest barriers to pre-K programs for parents? So we have access to affordable, access to quality, and we'll combine those two as well. Transportation to pre-K, hours of operation, staffing shortages, or other.
And a clarification, by pre-K, you mean preschool aged programs, or you mean services to children 0 to 5? Preschool aged?
Preschool aged, yes.
Got it.
So it looks like the number is going up, but I'm not seeing an actual change in the percentages. Angel, I'm not sure if that's something you can do on your end.
Sorry, Katie. Yeah, that's something I may have to pull on the back end.
Okay, no worries. Well, it looks like we have about 11 people have answered that one, so let's go ahead and move forward. And then what are the greatest barriers to the out-of-school care programs that we're seeing across Tarrant County? Okay. And then this will be an open-ended question. So what solutions could be enacted quickest with the greatest impact? I heard Kara mention meeting frequently and really helping to shape that infrastructure of providers. That may be something that we want to capture in this feedback as well. But if there are things that you can think of that would be quick wins or even long-term solutions, that may take a little bit of more time and effort, but would be worthwhile to explore. Please drop those in the chat. We'll take those, and if there are things that we can apply ARPA funding towards, we can include that in our recommendations. Hi, Rose. Thank you so much for joining us.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, I was listening from my car in the garage, and I just got to zip up here. I know we'll be wrapping up, but I just want to first thank Kara and Carol for their leadership on this issue. We are so fortunate to have such smart, powerful thinkers and doers on this important issue. One thing that I think hasn't been surfaced, but I want to make sure, I think Dr. Cavazos had mentioned, referenced this, that we figure out what works and we allocate some resources to being able to track. We'll be able to try a lot of really important pilots here or ways of doing business to improve the outcomes for our children and families. And I just hope after 5 years that we'll know what was effective so that we can keep doing that and advocate for the amount of resources it takes to do this well. So just wanted to add that 2 cents in.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Rose.
And Catherine, I want to also thank you and Angel. I know the process has been, you guys are really taking the time to get this right, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rose.
So some of the feedback is same solutions for county,
Katie, I think we might have lost you. There you go.
Sorry about that. It has a tendency to stop after I've been on a Teams call for so long. Infant and toddler infrastructure, sustainable infant and toddler system model, build up infant and toddler infrastructure, use of contracts to immediately pay for quality childcare in high need areas. These are all really, really great solutions. Rose, please go ahead. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, that was a mistake. Sorry about that.
And then are there any additional recommendations for childcare and out of school care you'd like to see considered? Anything specific? I know we've talked about a lot of different things today and you've already given us a lot of feedback, but anything additional that you'd like to see included?
I think some people have submitted and it just hasn't popped up yet. At least that's what's true on my end. So I think they're coming. There's some slowdown in the internet. You know, one thing I think we need to keep in mind just as a community is, especially as Build Back Better, if this passes and this becomes something that's true across Texas or true in a locality, there's going to be a need for some kind of coordinating entity to take all these different resources and put them together in a meaningful way. You know, you're going to have universal preschool funding, state pre-K funding, CCDF funding, you know, 0 to 5 entitlement funding, you know, perhaps local funding and others. And it's just overwhelming to a small business owner, and it's overwhelming to sophisticated nonprofits. So I think we're going to have to come up with a way that we simplify it, and also simplify it for families as they look for what they need for their children and families. We have to make it easy and convenient for them to be able to find those services instead of, you know, having to go to 20 different places to gather that information.
I agree, Kara. It's almost like there needs to be a database where they can go in and like ask a couple or answer a couple of questions, and then it'll match, you know, available programs and criteria. That may be something that we can recommend is investing in some sort of platform that is customizable in that way.
Yeah, and we have an initial platform to start with that we built during COVID, which is fantastic.
Yep.
I think it's just going to need to be something that's even more family friendly, that still has state pre-K. You know, our elementary schools are represented on that instead of just only looking for childcare.
Awesome. That is all we have for you today. I know we are a minute over time. We're happy to stick around and answer any questions that may come up. But thank you all so much for coming today and giving us an hour of your time. And thank you again to our presenters for sharing the information that they did with us today. We greatly appreciate it. Once again, I'm Katie McCoy. Angel Roebuck is my partner in this process. And yeah, thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, you.
Everyone.
I'm removing people.